Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters, and whatever else I say. I don't say anything else. Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is Saturday, September 7th, 2024. So I'm going to put this up as a separate audio. I have a series of videos I want to put in a playlist. This is one of them, and this also will go up in the Journey series. But I want to talk about the idea that divinity is within you, because it's a central idea of this channel. Like, I feel like the sole purpose of this channel, the most important thing that I do, especially to the American audience, Europeans, I guess Australians, Christian based audiences, that they have this idea that divinity resides within you. Because these other countries, at least the idea is there. And there's different levels to it, but it's essential. The difference between believing that God is somehow outside of you, and you have various religious types, the various religions, the types of religions, and types of spiritual training, where the emphasis is on some sort of divinity outside of you, like you yourself are a piece of crap person, and you're not worth anything, and you don't have any redeeming value. You're born a sinner in the Christian tradition, and even if you have a soul, right, you're still somehow a piece of crap, worthless sinner. That's all you'll ever be, and divinity is somewhere else. Like, you have to aspire to connect to divinity somewhere else, and it's going to be through that religion. The religion holds the keys to your divinity, a promise of a heaven, a promise of something like that. These various religions that teach this, and then people growing up believing that God isn't with them at all times, right? That God isn't inside of them, God isn't everywhere around them, and that to connect to God, you have to submit to some sort of external authority, outside authority, and then that authority will bring you to a place after you die or whatever. And so that is like really evil. Like, it's the worst thing that they can teach you. It's horrific. It's like a crime, right? And I'll get more into that in a bit. I'll come back to that. But let me talk about how this is a solution. Like, this is the fundamental solution to everything that's going on in the world. And so, if you don't have this idea of divinity within you, and it starts off as an idea and then it's an experience, right? I was blessed to have this experience in 1993 when I started the Sajmark system, which is a system that helps people connect with the divinity within. It has one purpose. It's a system, it's a method. And then once you connect with the divinity within, it changes your whole orientation to the world. Because your material life and your material egotistical pursuits become insignificant or less significant. They gain lesser and lesser significance. Your material life and your ego has lesser significance the more you embrace this idea. And as you get older, it's important because as you get older, people gain wisdom, hopefully, and they start realizing that the bad choices that you're making to fulfill your desires and your goals and your ambitions are hurting you spiritually and hurting the world and the collective. So let's first establish what our problem is, simply, as human beings. What our problem is as a culture, what our problems are individually, what's our problems collectively. Is that people will do bad shit, right? People will do horrible things to fulfill their ambitions and maintain their lifestyle and boost their ego and cement their legacy or whatever it is, right? Because of their pride, because of their egotistical views of themselves, because of their selfishness, right? I should say we, not there, right? If you can think back to bad decisions you made because of your whims, because of your inability to control your impulsive behavior, desire-based things, things that you do out of convenience, right? Things that you do that hurt the environment, hurt other people, like choices you make all the time, right? We're making choices all the time in terms of our consumption, and the consumption that we're doing isn't directly related to the toxicity of our planet. Like, and I'm just talking here about pollution, for example, but it goes so much farther than that, right? Physical pollution is something we can see and touch and understand. And people have, especially right wingers and people in the truth community, realize that the part of the global warming that is being pushed by the Democrats and the establishment is a monetized scam. The tax credits for global warming and CO2 emissions, that the carbon credits that they're doing, because they've turned into some governmental scam and they're not really concerned about the pollution, right? Or these people who push the idea of global warming, someone like Taylor Swift, or even more so someone like Al Gore, have private jets and have big houses where they are eating up tens of thousands of dollars in energy units to heat and cool their houses and all the rest of it, right? They have these mega mansions and things, and so their footprint is much greater than the average person, and yet they're whining to people about the environment. So people see the hypocrisy in that and let themselves off the hook, right? This is just, we're talking about pollution, but pollution is real. There's all kinds of pollution that we're doing. Things like Wi-Fi is a pollution. 5G and 4G is a pollution, and all the energetic things we're doing. Your ability to listen to this video and be on the internet. That's all part of it. Like, that's a form of pollution that's affecting the environment. But then there's the other types of toxicity that we're releasing into the environment, right? And that's real. We know it's real. We've seen the effects of pollution, and we know it's bad, but we keep on doing it. We keep on contributing our part and using whatever we're using. We turn on our whatever it is devices. Whatever we might do, and a dead bird doesn't drop out of the sky, or we don't start gasping for breath, or something physical that you can see the immediate effects of it, right? But there are long-term effects in the poisoning of the planet, and what that does to insect life and animal life and things like this. The mass destruction that's happening that people aren't aware of, right? Our O2 levels, our oxygen levels dropping, things like this, that could have long-term effects in the future of all the creatures that inhabit this planet, making it almost uninhabitable, close to uninhabitable, where, nuclear power and these things, the things that, you drop a nuclear bomb and there's, okay, that was, you see the devastation, but, what about all the radioactive things that we're doing that are more subtle, right? The slow kill, the things that don't kill you right away and don't kill the animal population right away, but it's doing damage, right? And so we're all contributing to that because we feel like our lifestyle and our comforts are more important than future versions of ourselves and future versions of animal life and everything else on the planet, right? We're destroying the very fabric of our abundance and our futures. We're destroying our futures. And no matter how much you talk about it or warn people about it, people find a way to rationalize it, right? They'll find a way to dismiss it because, scammers and, the people pushing it are, disgusting people that you can't trust, right? So another example of this would be fracking, where, all the politicians in the election, both politicians in the election, the four candidates that are running and multiple people who are running for congressional seats are saying fracking's a good thing. Like Kamala Harris reversed her position on fracking because she wants to win Pennsylvania. You can't win Pennsylvania and be anti-fracking, right? But they use this hydraulic fuel, the hydraulic fracking, and there are multiple toxic chemicals, if you look it up, that are injected into the earth. So the way that fracking works is that there's natural gas that is trapped below rock and other things. And for whatever reason, drill baby drill doesn't work. And so if they have to crack the rock and release the gas. And what they do is they put a mixture of these, it says, here it is. What is fracking? Modern high-volume hydraulic fracking is a technique used to enable the extraction of natural gas or oil from the shale and other forms of tight rock. In other words, impenetrable rock formations that lock in the oil and gas and fossil fuel production, make fossil fuel production difficult. So they blast this stuff into the rock, and it cracks the rock, and then it releases this natural fuel. And even getting oil out of the ground isn't our God-given right. Like, the oil is there for a reason. We know it has a purpose. It's buried beneath the earth, not for us to, put in these very inefficient vehicles that we drive around and then blast this exhaust into the air, affecting the oxygen CO2 balance. We're putting the carbon dioxide in the air, which is, poisonous to us, right? If you go in your garage and you turn on your car and you start breathing the exhaust, you die, right? It's a form of suicide where people lock themselves in the garage, open their windows, turn on the car, and they breathe in this, toxic material, and it kills them. So your exhaust is, lethal to you. It's killing you. It's killing, it's being released this poison, and it's just being distributed. I mean, just think about the selfishness there. We're driving these vehicles, and I'm not saying, okay, go over to electric, because that has its own issues as well, right? It's that we're producing poison at a mass level that's going out into the atmosphere. And it has an effect. It always has an effect. You say, well, it's not, I mean, when you're not, in a garage and you don't jump in your microwave and, it doesn't kill you that way, but your 5G and your 4G, these waves are out there and they're disruptive to all kinds of things in the environment, and they're having a negative effect on us, right? And so the fracking, there's these toxic chemicals that are in fracking: methanol, ethyl glycol, and propagyl alcohol. But there's also other chemicals in there that they use: diesel fuel and formaldehyde and chlorine. I mean, chlorine, like these things, sulfuric acid. I mean, there's all these different types of things that are in there. They have a host of toxic chemicals they're injecting into the ground, right? And so these things are bad for people. People are having this then enter into their drinking water, and they're lighting their water on fire, right? People, this gas is coming out with the drinking water because of this process. And, it's something where the politicians know it's bad for you. Trump is campaigning on toxicity, getting toxic chemicals out of the environment, and also your bodies, because he's, recently said this stuff because of Kennedy, and it's a message that's working. People realizing that our systems are toxic. I talk about this in terms of reading the ingredients, right? Like I say, how exhausting it is to read the ingredients of everything. That we just can't go to the store and pull something off the shelf and stick it in our bodies because there's poison in it, right? There's, you go to Walmart and you look at the people and they have a grocery cart full of cancer and heart disease. Like we're being poisoned by our food and our environment and things that we're doing. And so that is what I'm talking about in terms of a lack of connection to a soul, and where you make bad decisions based on selfish criteria and ambitions. And you see people have ambitions all the time where achieving a goal, they'll cross the line of appropriate behaviors, divine endorsed behaviors that the divinity within you would not endorse. Shortcuts that you can't take. The debt-based economy is another example of this. Shortcuts you can't take. Evil that you can't indulge in, that your soul doesn't sign off on, but your ego does. And your ego does this on a regular basis. All of our egos, our collective egos, and then the egos of the people running the system, the planet, the people with more power, are making decisions like this that are not endorsed by God and are not endorsed by the divinity within us. Bad decisions, evil decisions, demonic decisions, our egos indulge in. And so this is the problem. That's why humanity is in the state we're in, the world is in the state we're in. Because people will do bad shit. And it isn't always just the liberals, or it's just the deep state, or it's all of us. It's a behavior that has been cultivated where we have been disconnected from our conscience and our soul, and things that, in a good person, a spiritual person, there'll be a hesitation, and they'll be like, let's think this thing through. Let's, really understand what we're doing here before we make this decision that just doesn't feel right. People would go into the redwood forest and cut down these thousands of year old trees so they can build a house or something, right? Like, you don't have permission to do that. This is it's like an ancient being, right? There's a soul energy behind the tree, and this thing's been growing forever, and it's these. I mean, if you ever go see these redwoods, you're like, how the fuck could somebody look at this thing and say, I'm going to cut it down? I'm going to make this decision to cut this thing down. I'm going to cut down a whole forest of these magnificent trees because we need them to burn or to build or to whatever, right? Like, it's, you don't have permission to do that. Like, your heart is telling you, like, that's just wrong. Like, it's just wrong, right? Like killing a whale, looking at a whale and killing it, right? Again, if you're starving, you live in the frickin', in the, like Alaska or someplace, why the fuck you living in a place where you can't grow food? Like, move, like, and so killing a dolphin or something like that, right? Like these things that people do. There's a movie about this, a documentary that's supposed to be really hard to watch called The Cove, and I've never sat through it, but it's this stuff that's happening in Japan over them catching these dolphins, and it's like horrific, right? But there's things that you do that just cross a line that your soul and your heart don't want you to do. And a person becomes sensitive and has a relationship with this process inside them. All of a sudden, they start making better decisions. And they start feeling the effects of their bad decisions. Like, you can feel it. It bothers you. You're going to sleep, and it kind of haunts you. And you realize you said something you shouldn't. You hurt somebody's heart. You did something that like was wrong, and it's just there, and you're not you can't just rationalize it away and take some sleeping pill and make you feel. I mean, you can do that, but like you don't. Like, you feel it. You have these regrets, and you're like, I could have done this better, or that was a mistake, and you start doing some research about what your decision was, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I fucked that up, and I contributed to the negativity of this planet because of my selfishness, because of my ambition, because of my, my whatever it is, that's, my lifestyle, the things that I feel like I need and I can't live without. And so I'm contributing to this problem. I'm contributing to the collective destruction of this planet by, our selfish and unmitigated egotistical desires, right? And I can assure you, from doing this for years, doing this particular job, that I've seen it over and over again, that to keep our system going, our evil system that we're 100% dependent on, to keep this system moving forward, we have to do evil shit. And we're doing it all the time. And we're contributing to it in one way or another, each one of us, by participating in this system. And there's not really much of a choice, right? This evil system dominates human life, and there's nowhere to escape it. And so you have to contribute one way or another, right? But one way that's the solution can bear fruit is connect to divinity within you. Use the free time at your disposal, the massive amount of free time that you have compared to other forms of lifestyle, where so much of your time is based in survival, that there's no time in this short life that we live. Our lives should be much longer. But, a 70-year life, an 80-year life is just not enough time to, make spiritual progress, significant spiritual progress, and move forward with our connection to the divinity within us. But by doing that, people will lose these tendencies, these selfish, egotistical tendencies that have created the system we're 100% dependent on. And sometime in the future, pockets of the future, these little pockets of people living in a way that is consistent with the divinity within them, and making collective choices where their heart is connecting to their soul and God, and in a prayerful, meditative state, are able to see through their own personal bullshit and selfishness and egotistical pursuits and make the right decision time and time again. And so it's a solution to this problem that we have now. All the problems of humanity would disappear. All the bullshit politics, all the polluting, all the, it's not just the physical polluting, it's the spiritual polluting. It's having bad thoughts, indulging in demonic behaviors, whether it be, fantasies and, indulgence in like porn and things, things that are, are deviant in some way or another, and having thoughts of hatred and anger and just putting that out. Every time you have a feeling of hate, it goes out into the universe. It goes out into the you walk into a room and people are pissed off, angry. People are depressed, and you feel it. If you go outside and there's an angry mob and people are throwing stuff at buildings, and immediately it causes a sense of fear, and it's chaos, and or you get angry too, or you want to retaliate, or or act with the people or against them, and you get into this frenzy, and you all do things. There's these time that there's these riots, and there's these kids were going around, and this happened a number of times. People were filming this, and they had put piles of bricks, like a pallet of bricks, right near like city buildings and things. Remember when they had all those riots, the Trump riots, the BLM riots in 2020? And they were putting these bricks and things out there for no reason. Like there's no brick buildings, there's no construction going on, just a pallet of bricks for people to pick up and throw, because they wanted to create that chaos and anger, and all this anger. And then when that anger is unleashed and you have a mob, you see the physical effects where the mob just sweeps through like locusts doing destruction. But there's just how that plays in the environment. Angry people, disgruntled people, people who are ungrateful, people are hateful and negative, and are putting out this energy, and it contaminates the whole environment. And you see it when you watch TV shows and movies that make you feel this way and play on your emotions. And so you're literally just putting out these emotional pollutants, energetic pollutants, that are making everything worse. It makes the environment, the atmosphere heavy. It makes it really difficult to connect to the divinity within you, and connect with other people. And it just, what anger, anger and hatred and fear and all these conditions do, all the, desire-based lust and things like this, they're very heavy and gross. And it's hard for you to feel your highest nature inside of you, because you're being pulled down by your appetites and your these indulgences, and this energetic pollution that's pervasive in our planet, right? And so this is another piece of the problem. And so the solution to this thing, connecting to divinity within you, why is that so important? Now there's like elements of this thing. So first there's this idea that divinity exists within you, right? That there is there's something inside of you that's divine in nature, that there is a soul. And all the religions believe in it, and I'll get back to that in a moment, where it came from, the idea of the Atman in ancient India. But the consciousness that you have your physical body and your physical life and your heart that's, pounding away and pushing the blood through your system, and your lungs that are breathing in oxygen and keeping your system going, and your brain that is, making all these, choices, and making sure you're able to figure out how to get food and, water and things, the things that you need, food, water, and oxygen. Also your body temperature, needing heat, right, when it's cold, being able to build fire and have clothing and things for, keeping your body temperature from having hypothermia or being too hot and things like this, right? And so we have these things out there that potentially can kill us, right? The environment, the weather, and then all the lack of oxygen, lack of food, lack of water. And so our lives, we're alive, and we have an instinct. We're given this opportunity to live a physical life, and we have to keep ourselves alive. It's there. Our needs are there. We have our physical needs, whatever they are: food, water, air, heat and cool, and these things that you need to keep yourself going. So taking what you need, taking the things that you need to survive is, like a promise. Like that's something, all right, God says, yeah, I want you to stay alive. Under, the ideal circumstances, or the, most circumstances, taking what you need is okay. But taking what you desire is not. Your desires are infinite, right? You have your physical needs, whatever they might be, emotional needs, things that are, are pure, and they're, within your right to claim. They're things that God is going to provide for you on this planet. But desires can be, you want all the water in the world. I want to control all the water, and I want to charge other people to drink it. You're now usurping and all animal life, right? Like you own all the water. Like Nestle said, they want to own all the water. Buying up all the water, claiming water rights, denying people water, or using too much of the water so other people downstream can't use the water. These things, right? Like that's a desire based thing. You don't have permission to do it. It's a dickish move, an egotistical move. It's a greedy move. It's being a greedy motherfucker, right? It's being a greedy piece of shit. And that's what we are, greedy pieces of shit, right? That we're taking too much based in our desires, based on our fulfill our things that are desire based. They're not God given rights to play video games or to sit in a house cool to the exact temperature, and how that affects everything else, right? Using up too much resources that are that are beyond just your physical needs, but go far beyond that. And they're about your desires, right? I've talked about this in the past in terms of the manifest destiny and the Queen of England saying that she is the Queen or King of England, where having this orb and scepter that represents that they're God's representative on earth based in some bullshit bloodline thing, right? And then all the religions claiming they're the ones that are, they're the only ones that connect you to God. And so you have to pay a fee and a dues and swear your allegiance to them. And, they're promising you a heaven that doesn't exist. And we'll get back into that in a moment. All these things, right? And so those are desires. Your desires are infinite. Your needs are finite. Everyone can get their needs met, but no one can get their desires met, right? Especially if your desires are, beyond the world's capacity. You can't own the universe, right? You have desire to control the universe, to control these things. And so, this is a distinction here. And when you are a soul-based person, you're connected to your soul, you realize you have permissions to do some things and you don't have permission to do others. And so the system that I've been blessed with, the Sajmark meditation, it has a cleaning process because people have accumulated these samskaras, impressions, and grossness over years of bad decision making, and it prevents them from feeling the love and the divinity that exists inside of them, right? And so one of the things that's a need base is the need for love, and I've talked about this. Like you can survive, 40 days without food, 3 or 4 or 5 days without water, depending on whatever it is. 10 minutes without breathing, right? Oxygen. And then, no time at all without love, right? And so within each person, doesn't matter whether they're liberal, conservative, doesn't matter whether they believe in religion or an atheist, it don't matter what they do, whether they're a demon or an angel, every person that exists needs a soul. The soul animates the body. And this discovery that happened in ancient India in terms of modern civilization was when people realized that there was a spiritual element to their existence, and their dead corpse, when their corpse was, when the soul leaves their body, was lifeless. The person no longer exists. And I had this experience I've talked about quite frequently. I went to see my grandfather, my tough guy, action hero type grandfather who had fought in a couple world wars and was a fireman and he was still, he was this bigger in life kind of person. And I went in and, I looked at his dead body and I'm like, he's not there. It's just whatever is a slab of, human flesh there, right? It's not him. His essence is gone, right? His soul was disappeared. The first time I ever experienced like a dead body, I was like 10 years old. And I'm like, that's not him. Like, he's not here. I don't even know why we're doing this. Like, we're sitting there looking at him, and they put lipstick on the guy, and the guy was never going to wear lipstick, right? Like, he was just this tough guy who was just not, but, it was just this whole experience I had. And I knew that the soul, I didn't know I knew because I was 10 years old, but I knew that the soul animates the body, like this life that's there. And, when it leaves, you can look at the body and you can, whatever. I mean, I guess looking at the body confirms that the person's dead. Like, it gives you some visual confirmation. Oh, yeah, the soul has left. And that's what that's good for, seeing the dead body. It's not there to, touch and hold and cry over and things like this. I mean, the grieving process, sure, it can kick off the grieving process, seeing their dead body. The shock of losing a loved one, yeah, so you see the body and you're like, okay, this is, I can't go into denial about it. I have to accept this person's gone, but seeing it, you see the soul's gone. The soul is no longer in the body, and so it's the soul. And once we had consciousness that we had a soul that animated and created our body, and that it is something that has a purpose, we have a purpose. Our soul has a purpose here, and we can connect with our soul because it's within us. It's the part of us that's divine. It's a part of us that's connected to the God that's in everything, the soul that's in everything else, right? That doesn't need doesn't have physical needs, but has a spiritual purpose. And by sitting quietly and looking inside and connecting to the divinity within us, finding the soul and the essence of God that's pervasive all around us, we can make decisions based in that state of existence. We connect to the divinity within us, and the divinity within us guides us through our decision-making process, because we're making choices all the time. And most of the choices are wrong choices. There's one right choice, which I've talked about, and then all these other choices that aren't. And so the idea, say, okay, God exists inside of me, that's great. Yeah, okay, you got the idea. I did this book, My Friend Within, very important book for kids to have this idea that God is inside of me. Because religions are going to tell you the exact opposite, which again I'll come back to. But the idea that God's inside of you is an essential idea. So one is a mental thing. You can say, oh, okay, God is inside of me. That's an idea. But is there an experience of God? Is there a way to connect to God? Is there a way to include God in your decision-making process? Is there a way to feel the divinity within you? So that becomes a process, which is the Sagemark system. And it isn't a religion. It isn't this or that, me, us and them. It's something that's out there for people, any person to embrace, right? A system, a process in which you are cleaning out all the things that prevent you from connecting to the divinity within you. It's being cleaned out of your system. And there's this transmission to sort of highlight, God's love, this transmission that's given, which I was blessed with in 1993 to experience this. And I had this deep experience of it and was transformative, where now I had this ability and experience of feeling the divinity that was within me and pervading throughout the universe, that God was there. I felt God's presence and God's love, right? Where it was, where people do that. Like people have these experiences, but then they don't know how to keep that experience going and to use that, this now process, right? And so once that happens, where you realize that you can cultivate this experience, it takes, the rest of your life. You now have, this experience of something beyond your egotistical, solitary voice inside of you, your brain and your desires and your egotistical pursuits. I want this, I want that, I want to do this, I want to do that. I don't care what the consequences, whatever, right? But now you have you're connected to the source of your existence, the soul that's created you for its purposes. And now you can, and by living a life where you keep your heart clean and your, this channel open, you now have a way to make the right decision. Where before it was just so cloudy, it was so, it's just based in your impulses and your desires and these things. Where now you can make the right decision. Small decisions, big decisions, lifestyle decisions, all these things. Because in every life, you have these decisions that there's something you're really going to want to do. And that's the wrong decision. There's something that you're compelled to do by your, by these samskaras, these impressions, by your, your egotistical makeup. There's little decisions you're making on a daily basis, and then there's the big decisions. And inevitably, there's going to be something you want to do that is the wrong thing. And you see where it's the wrong thing. Like you just know. Like on some level, right? When you see the angel on one side and the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. And they're having your conscience and your ego are having this, discussion. When you're doing the wrong thing. But you go do it anyway, right? And that's happening all the time collectively. Bad decisions like fracking and things like that. Things that we should never even think about doing. Oh, we can inject a bunch of toxic chemicals into the deep into the earth so that we can, you know, deep fry some shit with our, gas stove or whatever it is, right? Drive our car to the bar and, get drunk or whatever. No, you don't get to frickin' destroy the world because of your hedonistic lifestyle, right? Okay, so I just took a break, ate breakfast, and did some other things, and I want to continue here. And I wanted to say, what this is about is people have difficulty making decisions, and there's a lot of hand wringing, a lot of worrying, a lot of did I make the right decision? What should I do here? What should I do there? Big major decisions, and then little incremental decisions that you make on a daily basis. And so, not sure you're making the right decision, not having a guiding force, not having a center of local control. LOCUS, it's a psychological term, locus control, where people don't have a sense of control over their life and decision making because they've already gone down a path where the wrong choices are part of that path. Like wrong choices are part of a goal or a lifestyle. We have that in our country, we have that in our corporate world, where wrong choices are necessary to succeed. If you want to succeed, you have to make these undivine choices, these demonic choices. Our system has to make it, the president has to make it, the Congress has to make it, the individual governmental people have to make it, the intelligence communities have to make it, and then all the individual citizens have to participate in that and do the wrong thing to keep the country going, to keep the system going. So our system now has wrong decisions, ungodly decisions, decisions that our souls and the divinity within us and God overall doesn't endorse or doesn't, is against, right? The wrong decisions. Wrong decisions are part of our structure. Your supermarket is filled with wrong decisions. Your lifestyle choices, what you watch on TV, what's available on the internet, things that are going to hurt your spiritual progress, make the world a worse place. And these politicians, like, the presidential candidates have to say, all right, we're into fracking because we want to win Pennsylvania, and that means jobs and money for Pennsylvania, even though it's the wrong decision, right? And so this is, the ability to make the right decisions, the ability to listen to your heart, to listen to your soul, to connect with the divinity within you. And so a process where when you're making a big decision through a meditative process and looking within and connecting to the divinity within you, the right choice will emerge, and you'll be able to see it. It's there, but people are clouded, and their ability is so gross and so, so amped up. This I want to make a separate video about this, or separate voiceover to some, introduction to one of these videos about being sped up, right? They talk about this in sports, where they try to speed a young player up, or even, a seasoned veteran, to where you're like sped up. And, if you've ever been in a situation like that, you're in the weeds. That's a term for restaurants and other kind of jobs like that, where you're overwhelmed and you're just, in a frenzy, like your adrenal glands are firing and you're not making conscious choices, and you're just reacting to everything, and everything's coming at you too quickly, and you can't think, you can't process, and being able to slow down, being able to take a breath, being able to step back, and, having this process, having this ability to do that, be able to take a breath and slow down and make, stop reacting, stop, fight or flight response, stop all these things, just slow down and be able to, to make a thoughtful, spiritually based decision, as opposed to rushing through everything because you're in a frenzied state, right? And so this is what I'm talking about. So you have these big decisions where you can take your time and let the right decision emerge. Like if you don't know right off the bat, you go through this process, and over time, it'll tell you, there'll be this movement where you'll be like, all right, this is the right thing to do. So that's part number one. Then there's the quick decisions. You have to make incremental decisions, little choices here or there. You're at the supermarket, you're making choices, all these things, right? I mean, of course, going into the supermarket with a framework of eating more healthily and doing your research and reading the ingredients and having, already this built into your decision making process of what's good for you and what's, what your overall dietary plan is, like having, that kind of a situation where you're not just going in there and randomly looking at shit and pulling it off the shelves because it's it's an impulsive type situation. But again, any of these things where you're making these choices, like what are you going to eat for lunch? You don't have a plan. These things you can plan ahead of time, right? You have a meal plan and have good healthy foods on hand, so you don't have to. Oh, I'm really hungry and there's nothing here. What can I do? And you make some quick choice or whatever. And so there are choices where you don't have a lot of time to think about it though, and being able to have that inner connection. So imagine being able to make the right choice and know it's the right choice and not have to stress about it. And living with the results is that your choice is approved and endorsed by the divinity within you. And so you're not worried about the results. Like whatever happens, it's the right choice. Being able to be comfortable with that, right? And people being able to, live with their, without any sense of regret or any sense of guilt. And, when you're going to sleep and you're like, worried about or regretting what you said or did. And because you're making these bad choices all the time. But there's some, sense of guilt, some sense of, something looming over your head, like some consequence for your bad choices, and just be in a state of worry. Your cortisol your levels are up, your stress levels are up. You're in a frenetic state because you're constantly either fixing your mistakes from the past, or you're worried about the consequences of your mistakes at the present. These things, right? And so this is what I'm talking about: the divinity within you emerging, so that you're in line with your soul's choice. And when that happens, there's a partnership, and the divinities within you helping you navigate through the difficult choices, the ones that make it more difficult, your life more difficult, your path more difficult, because the easy choice is the wrong choice, right? The one that's going to make your situation better immediately, right? The immediate improvement of your situation through lying and doing something wrong. Oftentimes the easiest choice and the one that's going to be best for you in that moment, short term, is the wrong choice. And often that involves deception and lying and things, right? So this is what I'm talking about. And this is what's made the world a bad place, because it's, embedded in our system to do the wrong thing and make the wrong choices. People don't know how to make the right choices. And even when they make the right choices, they're not sure about it because there's no internal verification of the choice. And so it creates more stress and worry. And then, they can't sustain that choice because they have doubts about it, right? So when you know that your soul signed off on something, you don't have doubts in your choice, you have faith in your choice, and you live with the results. And that's just as important as being able to make the right choice. It's being able to sustain the right choice and know it's the right choice and not bail on it the first time there's adversity or something, right? So that's something through the Sajmark system. I've made this Gratefulness meditation channel, which is a free service where people can use the meditative practice to learn to connect to the divinity within them in a way that, it becomes automatic, where I just, in my own experience, I used to make all kinds of bad choices, right? I didn't have a guiding light, a beacon, like a lighthouse or something like this. I was just wandering around in my late 20s making bad choices, through my, later years when I became an adult. And I didn't have any framework to make the right choice. I didn't even know what the choices were. I didn't know what my options were, and these things, because I didn't have any sense of divinity within me or spiritual path. And I was just going along with what the system wanted me to do, right? We have a system that this is what you're supposed to do when you're in your 20s. This is what your friends are doing, right? This is what the people your age are doing. And you don't think about it. I was eating bad foods, fast foods. I didn't have a sense of how to cook things. I didn't have a sense of what was healthy or not, using drugs, drinking, things like this. There was a total lack of consciousness, right? I would go out to bars or whatever, and then I'd run out of money. I'd go to an ATM. I was working multiple jobs. I was in college and also working part-time jobs. I had money, but I wasn't balancing my checkbook. I didn't really care about shit like that. I mean, I didn't have like a head for business, and I had a resentment or resistance to it. These types of things, adult things, and so I was bouncing checks that I didn't have to bounce, and I had these over withdrawals and things from my bank. So I got, there were so many of them. My bank put me on this thing called check systems, which was it was a blacklist where if I went to a bank and I wanted to get a bank account, I couldn't. Right. So, went on for a number of years. It was like a 20 year, it was some kind of like financial, like freaking disaster. Right. For me for a number of years. But my bank was bought by another bank. So I went into the bank to ask to get it taken off, 5, 6 years later. Right. Like I, realized the error of my ways and knew that I had to, you know, um, fix this, from my, my early days in college and, being stupid and impulsive and things and not, being, I mean, all I had to do was, I'm good at math. I mean, I have the ability to do these things. They're hard for me to do clerical things, but I can do them. And just with a little effort, I could have been aware of my, bank and whatever, what I could take out, just these things, right? I mean, just simple things that people learn to do, but I had resistance to it. And the woman I called, the one I was talking to said, look, the bank was bought and they purged all the old records, so you just have to challenge this and they'll release it. They'll get rid of it. She was like a kind person and she gave me probably information she shouldn't have, but I was able to get off this, this problem, right? There were other things where I was, drinking and partying and I was playing a lot of sports to sort of compensate. I played basketball a couple hours a day. But, just in general, my consciousness wasn't there. Like I was like an automaton. And now I've done this spiritual practice for a number of years and my consciousness has expanded and, I just think about things I didn't think about. Like in terms of just ordinary things that happen every day that you take for granted and you see and you just deal with it and you don't really think about it, what it means, a systemic abuse that's happening and gaslighting and, all the things I cover on this YouTube channel. Like I'm aware of things that I just don't say, oh, that's just the way it is. And, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'll just do it. Like there's no longer any of that, right? Like, sometimes I just knuckle under and do the thing that I don't want to do or, that isn't congruent with my soul or whatever just because it has to be done. But I'm conscious of it, right? I'm conscious of making that decision. I'm conscious of the demonic aspect of our system. I'm conscious of, how things aren't the way they should be, right? I'm at least aware of it. Like even decisions that I don't want to call them wrong choices. It's just what you have to do. Like I'm participating in something and I know I'm contributing to something negative because it has to be done. Like I can't find a way out of it, right? I can minimize it maybe, but it's just, we're all participating in the system and the system's taking us in the wrong direction. And so the thought becomes, well, I'm doing God's work and I'm doing what God wants me to do and this is what I have to do. This is the system that I have to live with. This is the, demonic system. Eventually it'll be cleansed, eventually it'll be removed from this planet and, human beings and we'll have something better. But until that time, there's things that you have to go along with just because there's no choice in the matter. But at least being aware and witnessing it and, sending that information back to God, like as you're, thinking about God and you're connected to God and you're watching what's going on here, the information is being fed back to the source and, a prayer of correction and something better, right? Something you start seeing the things that are wrong in the system and they're all over the place. And, systemic wrongdoing, right? Systemic anti-God, anti-divine, structure of our system. And so part of it is you're creating the solution within by changing and connecting to the divinity within you. And that'll start manifesting a system that is suited for that type of person, right? So now you're a person who's swimming upstream against a demonic system. And life is hard because everything that you're choosing is, making your life harder, making it more difficult because doing the right thing is not automatic. It is actually unwanted by the system. And they're trying to beat that out of you by forcing you down a path where making the right decision is the easiest thing to do and what you're supposed to do within the framework of the power structure. But as you connect to the divinity within you and you start becoming divinized in your not just your choices but your thoughts and purity of your thoughts and mind and these things, right? Where you're indulging less in things that are gross or some scar producing, or that are taking you in the wrong direction. You can start. One of the things with the meditation I've been doing, like I could just like right now put down this microphone and sit here and not think about anything for minutes, right? With maybe a thought flashing here or there, but I can sustain a thoughtless state for long periods of time, short periods of time, right? And being able to minimize the my mind wandering and all the these kind of thoughts people have. I mean, people have lost control of their minds where they lie awake in bed and they just have these thoughts and they can't help it, and the emotions, and they're feeling anger and fear and all these negative things and worry and stress, and their minds are like are out of control. They can't stop themselves from having dark thoughts and whatever it might be, right? Obsessive thoughts, and then they start acting on these thoughts because they're like out of control, and they jealousy of things, like they imagine things like their spouse is cheating on them, or their things that aren't there. They start looking for clues, going down the freaking rabbit hole. I mean, this happens even in the truth community where people end up losing control of these. They become paranoid and delusional, and they start seeing things that aren't there because their minds and their emotions they're out of control, and there's no sense of connecting to something higher or better, and they just become distorted. The reality becomes more and more distorted as they lose control of their thinking process and their emotional reactions. I mean, there's so much mental illness that's prevalent, and then you start taking these tranquilizing type drugs that numb you out and stop this from happening, but you no longer have a pulse and our inability you have the inability for creative thought and creative expression because you now have this Thorazine shuffle, right? You're just, you're on these high dose of, suppressants and, things that are numbing you to reality, and you just become tranquilized, right? So anyways, getting back to the central point. So connecting to the divinity within you, having a process to do that, and then cultivating this relationship as a solution to all humanity's problems. I think I've described it as, but you can either understand it or you can't. If you can see it, then it becomes, some effort to clean out the things that are preventing you from connecting to the divinity within you, and then to, have a process and the transmission and cleaning that are available in the Sajmark system. It's the best system ever invented for this process, and it's a singular system. The heartfulness meditation that now has become a corrupt version of this system, which is now, deviated from its central purpose, is no longer, that system. But the Sajmark system and the Gratefullness meditation YouTube channel I've created to help people facilitate this connection and use the services, the free services that are available. It's linked in the description box to all my videos. And that to me is my central, my central, purpose here on this YouTube channel. It all comes back to that. Understanding that our system is completely fucked and warped and taking you in the wrong direction and forcing you to make not only bad decisions, but disconnect you from the divinity within you. The opposite of what I'm saying here. Not only the idea that God is within you, but also disconnect you from that divinity. And so let's get into the idea of the current religion very briefly. I've talked about this in the past. Our current religion being Christianity here in America, but this is for all worldwide religions, that they decided that it was best for them to say that, like for Jesus, you had Jesus' central teaching. His most important teaching was the kingdom of heaven lies within. So this goal of Christianity, if you're a Christian, what's your goal? To get to heaven, right? So that you're working your whole life and you're accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord, so that when you die, your soul will go to heaven. This is the promise. They say that, if you do this the way we tell you to do it, you accept the Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, he'll make sure you get to heaven. Anybody else, any other religion, any other process that doesn't involve our religion, our church, our Bible, and accepting these conditions results in you going to hell. So there's a binary choice here. You're either going to go to hell or heaven when you die, and they give you a path and a promise to heaven. So their religion is saying this is what you're going to do. And this is the deal we're going to give you if you do what we say. If you become a participant in this process, you donate money, you attend church, you become part of the community, you tell other people about our religion, you teach this to your kids, you read the book, and you understand and think about this all the time, that by doing this that you're guaranteed a place in heaven, right? A guarantee they can't give you. Nobody can. There's no material person that can guarantee you that this is going to happen. And there isn't a heaven like they're saying it is. But this is the goal, right? Let's just start to understand what the goal is. Christianity is to get to heaven and prevent you from going to hell. But then you have this contradictory teaching, the kingdom of heaven is within. So what the fuck does that mean, right? Like, that's Jesus's primary teaching. It's his best teaching. So heaven isn't some place that we're going to die and our soul's going to go on a trip and a journey to heaven, or go on a trip and a journey to hell. But heaven exists within, right? If heaven exists within, then hell exists within as well. So they're not places you're going to. They're places that you already are experiencing. Not even places, they're conditions. So heaven is a condition. It's inside you, right? Heaven exists in your heart, where your soul is, where your divinity is, and it also exists in your heart where hell is, where your decision making, your bad decision making, and your egotistical decisions are, and your accumulation of the consequences and future actions, and these impressions, some scars that are there that you're going to have to deal with because of your bad decision making that disconnect you from the heaven within. So the hell is disconnecting you from the heaven and preventing you from experiencing the heaven that exists inside of you, the divinity that's inside you. That's why they don't talk about this teaching, right? How many people say that their favorite teaching is for Jesus is the kingdom of heaven is within? Okay, so I went to look it up. This is the King James Version. And it says here, this is Luke 20. And when he was demanded of the Pharisees when the kingdom of God should come, he answered them and said, the kingdom of God cometh not with observation, neither they shall say, lo here, or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. So this is a clear statement of that heaven is inside. And the church itself and the religious teachings and the religious, emphasis can't be on this teaching, because it contradicts this idea that heaven, there's a God somewhere out there, which comes from the Old Testament, not from Jesus's teaching. It's this bullshit. The Jewish religion teaches this idea of a wrathful God in heaven, which doesn't exist. Some guy sitting on a throne who's a king. There's nothing worse than a king, but back then the king was everything. So when they wanted to demonstrate power, they said, oh, God is a king. God's a king. God's kingly. And so this idea of, people would ask, what's God like? Oh, God's the king of kings, right? God's the king of kings. What the fuck does that mean? He's the king of all kings, right? Kings have to answer to him, because kings are the most powerful. Kings are godlike. And so, primitive people, they couldn't understand God. They understood God through power. And they understood that kings were above them and had power over them, sometimes smarter than them, more, more evolved than them, maybe more conscious or whatever. And so it's like a Judas goat, right? A Judas goat. They put a goat with the sheep. The sheep are stupid. They'll follow a goat, and the goat leads them into slaughter. They follow the goat because they know the goat's smarter than them. And so they go, all right, let's follow this smart guy over here. Smart guy is trained by the farmer. And so the goat leads them to slaughter, right? So, Judas goat. It's like the idea of God being a celebrity now. Like, people worship celebrities, thinking being a celebrity, rich and famous, is the goal. And these people are better than you, and they're on a higher plane of existence. So let's, think about God as a celebrity, right? That's how people are in their primitive way of thinking. And so that's what they did. But so this central goal of the Christian religion is that if you behave and you accept and you do what you're told, and you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, that you're going to get into this place that your soul is going to travel to. Well, your soul is in heaven all the time. Your soul is in this etheric world, this idea of some, world without physical consequences, a world without, the physical evils and difficulties and diseases and miseries and things that are there in a third dimensional reality where you can feel pain, you can feel, loss, you can feel loneliness, you can feel anger and hatred and all these things. And that's, where the negative and the positive exist inside of you. And by learning not to indulge in the negative and embrace the positive, you can experience the kingdom of heaven within, because you feel God's love all the time, because it's there within you. It's all pervading, right? You're not excluded from God's love at any point in time. It's always there for you. God never stops being love and giving you love, because God's there and God's love, right? So there's always love available. So I went for a little bit of walk, and I'm doing some various chores, and I want to take a step back and come back to this thing with the inconsistencies with the Christian religious teachings here. Not Jesus' teachings, but the religious teachings. And so when I say that this is, somewhere in the title of this video will be about solving all the problems of humanity. And so there's two types of problems that we're talking about here. There is the problems that I've addressed here about humans beings choosing the wrong thing, making bad choices, and therefore creating self-inflicted wounds and problems that are, mistakes because they go against the will of God and your soul's path and these things, right? So there's that. But then there's just the shit you go through. You could be the highest developed saint, you could be the most spiritual person, and you're going to go through things that you can consider problems, right? But when you're living the way I'm saying, you cultivate a state of gratitude and you understand and have faith that there's a plan and that everything that has happened to you is coming from God, then those problems become blessings, right? They are liberating you from your egotistical limitations, plus it's cleansing away things that were mistakes you did in the past or things you have to pay for, bad decisions, or there's lessons involved in those, what we consider problems. So they become blessings, right? Miseries is divine blessings. Okay, so I have a meme. I'll hopefully show it again in a future video, my next video. I'll leave it up there. But it's an eagle bowing its head with a flag behind it. Dear God, I bow my head and ask, if it be thy will, please save this land from those who seek to destroy it. There's so much wrong with this statement and this prayer, right? I mean, the good part of the prayer is, if it be thy will. That's the best part of the prayer, because it's obviously not God's will, right? God's will has to be to destroy the system, because the system can never be divine in its orientation and nature, because it's gone the other direction completely. Maybe there was a point where they could have, our system could have been divinized. There's always a chance of something like that happening, but when it goes to a point where so much evil is being done and so much, the people are so far gone and the system's so far gone that there's only one option, and that's to destroy the system and build something better, right? And so all the miseries that go with that, and there'll be plenty of them, will be hard to accept. And even if you're someone like me who knows that we deserve everything that we get in terms of, all the bad things that are coming and more, it's hard. It's hard to deal with things that are so against your desire-based, your ego, the things that you thought you were promised. I mean, the changes that I'm talking about here in a collapsing system are, and just the daily miseries that people go through anyway. They're difficult. So it takes real strong faith and the ability to connect to God in a way that's, much deeper than what I'm talking about here, to really, have full faith in everything that's happening to you is coming from God. But there's been many people that have achieved this state, that were able to, even when they were being tortured, even when the worst things were happening to them, they were able to transcend their, Jesus had his moment of weakness when he said, Father, why art thou forsaken me, when he was being crucified. Of course, there's going to be things like that. But ultimately, realizing and being grateful for the miseries that are befalling you is a state that people have achieved. Many people on different levels have achieved that state. And so all of us can do that. We all have the potential to do that, because human beings here on this planet have achieved that before. So in the face of, the miseries and the difficulties and problems we've created that are self-inflicted, by connecting to God and doing, the right thing always, finding out the divine choice and making that choice, all of those problems can be alleviated. And then the problems that are left are here for our benefit, and we can have faith and gratitude so they cease to be problems. And so that explains the title of this video, right? The problem right now is people, and we can self-correct by connecting to our soul and minimizing our egos and becoming what we are meant to become in the first place, the divine version of ourselves, and make a society full of saints, not as a title, oh, this person's a saint, that person's a saint, as some title that you get, but a saint because you are one, because you've surrendered, your ego has surrendered, and you now only do what your soul and God want you to do. You make the right choice all the time, even in the most difficult situation. You make the divine choice, and you become these people that are operating on a completely different plane of existence. Because as soon as you start embracing this idea that divinity is within you, and you just like are doing a little bit, you're just taking baby steps to connect to the divinity within you, you rise above the highest level people. I've talked about that quote from Master Charji, that the lowest part of the higher is still higher than the highest part of the lower. And so people who are just material life-based people, egotistical people who achieve great things, become great people, they're still lower in terms of their approach, in terms of their consciousness, than people who start embracing the divinity within them and go on a spiritual journey and change their orientation to life. Even the initial stages, you've now reached a whole different level of existence. And when the mass of people do that, when everybody does that and embraces this divinity within them, then there's this transformation. So going back to this idea in Christianity, right? It's about the conflict between Jesus saying the kingdom of heaven is within, and John 3:16, that you can only get through the Father. You can only get to the Father through the Son. So there's two contradictions here. There's the Our Father prayer that we said in Catholicism, the idea that God as a father, which is a wrong thinking. Again, God is a king, God is a father. This is things, people used to have better fathers, maybe, I don't know. But if you had a bad father, what does that mean, right? And of course, God can also be the mother, the Mother Earth, the nurturer. In fact, God is more like a mother in terms of the way the mother loves. Your mother loves you on a different level than your dad. You can have a very loving dad, but your mom is forced to love you based in, just the natural order of things, right? The mother's love. And so God is both a mother and a father, but is more than that, right? Because those are just human roles and ways to explain God to people. But this idea that we're all children of God one way or another, God's our mother and our father and our creator, then if we're created by God, there's no one individual son, there's no a throne where God sits in the middle and the Holy Spirit sits on one side and Jesus sits on the other, and there's none of this. Trinity, there's none of these things. God is all pervading. And so this contradiction, because it says over and over, God is our Father in the Bible, and the kingdom of heaven lies within you. John 3:16, we know that there's a Council of Nicaea. There's places that this historically happened, right? There's historical accounts of this, and I know it happened because this fucked up thing that's happened since then. That they wanted to make Christianity the only way that you could get to God, right? They are talking about this. Well, how can we change the story? Because again, these other people in Europe are practicing druidic religions, these sort of shamanistic religions. And so there's all these religions in all these European countries, and there's other religions out there. There's Judaism, and there's Muslim, there's Islam, and then there's, Buddhism, and then there's, Hinduism. And so there's other religions, and as, they're looking at how they can grow their religion while dismissing the other religions and the other spiritual practice, they have to come up with a way. They have to say, we have an exclusive deal here you can only get in Christianity. And this is, you might not want to believe this if you're a Christian, but it happened. I know it happened. You know it happened because it's the way that they describe everything. And, I talk about this story that my family went to Ottawa, Canada. And there were some Native American people in Native American dress there outside of some, some, I don't know where we were. And my mom said, I can't believe that those people would go to hell. Like she was doubting the teaching. And I didn't know what the fuck she was talking about, right? I was into the Bible at that time, but I didn't, I was 13 years old, whatever it was, teenager. And I'm like, yeah, what are you talking about? And so years later, when I'm making these videos and people are posting John 3:16, and I've seen signs for John 3:16 and at football games, and never really looked into it. And then people are telling me I'm going to hell because I'm doing this meditation. And I remember my mom saying this, and I understand that this horrible teaching that they give, this blasphemous teaching, that you can only get to heaven through Christianity. You can only get to the Father through the Son. Of course, they're not talking about Jesus. They're talking about the religion. They're the Son, right? Because the religion speaks for Jesus. And the religious authority tells you what you need to do to get right with Jesus. And they cherry pick Jesus' teachings. Of course, the Old Testament's a piece of shit book that's not about God at all. And the New Testament's, it's an okay book. It's not even that great, right? It's got some good teachings in it, but it's not, a very profound religion. When Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within, that's all he could do was say it. He couldn't deliver it to people. He couldn't deliver the experience, which can be delivered in the Sage Marg meditation, through meditation and feeling and experiencing God. It's a great teaching, especially for that time. And the people he was dealing with, the primitive people that he's dealing with, of course, we're not better than those primitive people. We are more sophisticated now, and we have better technology, and we're better educated, and we are less superstitious in some ways. But we got our own weird superstition, and we're, much more unnatural than those people. So it isn't like we've evolved, but we are more sophisticated now. And we have the ability for abstract thought. We understand science. And so some of these things like flat earth and some of this stuff that was given, we can say, oh, that stuff's, BS, whatever it is, right? Because of just technology and sophistication and, an understanding of these other types of things. Of course, now there's a religion of science, which is a complete lie and sham. So there's all this that can't be trusted either. Like nothing can be trusted, right? But in terms of this teaching, and why it's so bad, is that they purposely did this, and it created all these religious wars, and it's just based in lies. Because God is within you all the time, and God's there, and you can connect to God. You can use a system like the Sage Marg meditation, Gratefulness meditation. You can just go in and connect to God. And again, if you're a person who has a very gross inner condition, it's going to be harder to connect to God because you're going to hear all these different voices, and there's a massive confusion. Your inner world is chaos with, split personalities and, just all this guilt and shame and hatred and anger and, all these negative things, fear and, paranoia and just all the things that exist inside of you that prevent you from, hearing the divine voice. I mean, that's part of it. Like that has to be dealt with so that you can experience divinity within you. And maybe just you need more time as a human being. You need more sophistication. You don't have the ability for abstract thought. You didn't get enough protein because of your, being born in poverty, and you weren't around educated people with, the ability for critical thinking skills. I mean, there's all these, factors involved, but it's there. The divinity was there within you. There's a time where the soul was discovered. There was a time where human beings were more animalistic, right? At some point in our consciousness, our evolutionary period. I mean, there's people like this right now, primitive people living in primitive situations. And they have maybe some kind of spiritual connection to Mother Earth as a very primitive idea of God. But mostly it's all about materialism, right? They eat, they sleep, they breathe, they drink, they mate, they try to gain comforts, and they live a very primitive life, animalistic in some ways, right? They have some limited technology, and I'm not thinking technology is a barometer for evolution. I think the opposite. It helps you de-evolve. Technology has made us weaker, but they don't have any sort of, free time. They're not contemplative. They're not meditative. They haven't evolved. They've lived the same way for centuries. Pure people, natural people, innocent people in some ways, but they're living like animals. And at some point, human beings discovered that they had a spiritual essence, that there was an energy, spiritual energy inside of them. And it was called the Atman in Sanskrit. Now, Sanskrit was the original spiritual language of this ancient, culture and ancient, civilization. India, of course, is a pit now. There's so much corruption. It's filthy. It's polluted. There's lots of problems with India. I've been there multiple times, but the spiritual bones there is truly the holy land. And people who have experienced this know what I'm talking about. Who have gone there, experienced the spiritual side of India. And because they have an ancient tradition of experiencing and connecting with God, and it's part of their culture to teach that God is within you. Namaste, the God inside of me bows to the God inside of you. The soul, the spiritual energy inside of me bows before the best part of you, bows before the best part of me, right? Beautiful type of, greetings and things that are woven into the culture. But years and years ago, somewhere between like 50 and 100 or 200,000 years ago, there was a discovery of a soul. And there was knowledge of the soul that was given to people, a sophisticated knowledge and yogic teaching about how to connect with the soul. And all these other religions have plagiarized that discovery. And this discovery is here for everybody. It's not a part of the Hindu religion. You don't owe them a copyright for believing in a soul, because it's a soul that was given to all humanity, and it wasn't based in a religion. When this was discovered and this teaching was given to people, that they understood that they had a soul, right? Even on a primitive level, everyone was supposed to get this teaching. But it has been utilized and used in inappropriate ways in these bogus religions that are here for power and control over people, right? And this is what I'm getting into with all this stuff with John 3:16 and these other bogus teachings, where the religion then acts as a middleman, even though it teaches you have a soul, an Atman inside of you, that you can't connect with it, and you're just a piece of shit sinner, and that's all you'll ever be. And if you connect to the religion connect to Jesus through this religion, you're going to heaven, a promise they can't deliver for something that's been inside of you the whole time. And so this is where the solution comes from, right? That there's divinity within you, and connecting to this divinity, first understanding the idea, and then developing some sort of connection and working towards cultivating that relationship is what will save humanity. That's why I say only spirituality will save this world in the ending of this video. That's not a quote that I made up. That's coming from the Sajmark system years and years ago. But it's something that I have learned and believe and experienced wholeheartedly from my own transformation. Not that I'm like a saint or somebody perfect, but I just make better decisions, and I'm operating on a much higher level. Even if I'm just in the early stages of my spiritual journey, where I am, it's not important. Just that I'm moving forward, and that everybody who embraces this and moves forward in some way, you start negating your own toxicity, your own demonic nature, your own, we have a demon inside of us, and we have an angel inside of us. We have a saint, a potential saint, and a potential sinner, right? We have the ego, which is prone to doing the wrong thing and going against God's will and doing our own thing. And then we have the soul that does the right thing. So when we embrace our higher nature, then we negate the lower nature that does all the damage here on planet Earth and takes us in the wrong direction personally and contributes to the collective negativity. And so as more and more people do this, and again, let me just close with this. So I've been saying this for years, and I don't know how many people get it. I don't know how many people have been affected by it. I may get 5,000 regular viewers, people who have used to view my channel and who have since left. I don't know how many of them have thought about this. People who didn't understand this when they came to my channel, and there's some understanding, and then how many people have acted on it and to increase their relationship, and how many people have stuck with it and are working to cultivate this relationship. But it's a small number of people. And I'm probably one of the few people on YouTube talking about this, right? I know in terms of the Sajmark system, there's no one who talks about this like I do. Most of them don't really get it. Even people who have done the meditation for years, they do the meditation, but they don't know how special it is, and they don't know what a privilege it is to do it, right? And so these are people who are maybe even saints, better people than me in lots of different ways, more successful in, maybe their material life, or more, nicer, kinder people than I am, more committed to God and doing service for God. But they don't really get it. Maybe they were born into it. They're Indian people born with this idea, so they don't understand it like they should. It just becomes words, oh, God's inside of you. Yeah, but what does that mean? If God's inside of you, well, why aren't you connected to God in a deeper level? And why are you making the same stupid ass decisions you made years ago? And so I don't know what the effect of it, me saying this over and over again over the years, me writing the book, My Friend Within, a kid's book. So kids can start off with this idea. But it's the biggest kind of breakthrough, one of the biggest breakthroughs in all human history. You think all the technological breakthroughs and social breakthroughs and, educational breakthroughs and, ways that people have shown brilliance in different fields of music and athletics and, math and science and, all the ways people have shown, made discoveries about the scientific world or technological advancements and all these things. But the idea that you have a soul and the idea that there's divinity within you is the number one discovery, the most important discovery a human being can make. And then embarking on that spiritual journey is your purpose. Your soul created your body so you could do this. And people have just lost their way. And that's why we're messed up and completely fucked. And if we don't pull ourselves out of this through this process of finding divinity within you, humanity will be wiped from the face of the planet. The planet itself might be destroyed. Just be a lost cause. And so that's how important this discovery is. And, when people hear it, they're like, oh, that's nothing. I mean, if I heard it years and years ago, I've been like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why is that important? Like, until I experienced it when I was 29, it was a transformational experience for me. And I understood my true purpose here. And it's changed everything. It's something where it's out there. Like people can, it's the information's out there. It's inside of you already. It's something that's congruent to who you are as a person. But most people are so gross and so lost and so complex and all these things. They can't see the simple beauty of the true nature of their experience here and the true purpose of their experience here and embrace this divinity within. It's sad, but, maybe things will happen in the future where that won't always be the case. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.